Here is something that might surprise you. Anger in healing isn't a sign that something went wrong. It's actually a sign that something finally went right. For a long time, maybe years, you were numb, or you were in survival mode. You were too busy managing the pain to actually feel it. Anger means you finally thawed enough to feel. It means your nervous system no longer believes it has to stay frozen to keep you safe. That's not a breakdown. That's your body saying, okay, we're finally safe enough to process this. But nobody tells you that. So instead of recognizing it as progress, most people panic. They think they're getting worse. They think healing broke them. It didn't. The anger was always there. You just finally have enough safety to let it surface. Healing anger doesn't always look like rage. It shows up in 5 distinct ways, and most people only recognize one of them. This is the most obvious one, and still many people feel guilty for it. You might suddenly feel furious at a parent, at an ex, at a friend who wasn't there, at someone who should have protected you and didn't. This anger is not bitterness. This anger is your soul finally saying what happened to me was not okay. And that sentence, that is the foundation of every boundary you will ever set. You are allowed to be angry at people you also love. You are allowed to be angry at people who are no longer in your life. You are allowed to be angry at the dead. Anger doesn't require the other person to be present to be valid. This one is quieter and often more painful. Why did I stay so long? Why did I let that happen? Why didn't I see it sooner? Why did I keep going back? Here's what you need to hear. You made the decisions you made with the information, the tools, and the capacity you had at the time. The version of you that stayed, that version was doing their absolute best to survive. Being angry at yourself is part of the process, but it has to move through, not become a home. The goal is to let the anger teach you something and then let it go, not to weaponize it against yourself indefinitely. This one hits different. Grief and anger live right next to each other. And when you start healing, you often look back at years, sometimes decades, and feel a deep, aching fury. I could have had a different childhood. I could have had better relationships in my 20s. I could have chosen myself sooner. I lost so much. This anger is real. The time was real, and it's okay to mourn it. But here's the reframe. The fact that you're angry about the lost time means you now understand your own worth. You now know you deserved better. That knowing is the thing that changes everything from here. This one is uncomfortable to admit, but it's more common than anyone says aloud. You watch someone who had a loving childhood navigate relationships with ease. You see someone who was never betrayed trust people freely. You see someone who never had to unlearn anything, just living. And something in you rises up that feels a lot like anger. That is not jealousy. That is grief wearing anger's face. It's your inner child saying, I wanted that. I deserved that. Why didn't I get it? You don't need to perform happiness for other people's ease. You don't need to rush past this feeling. Acknowledge it, name it, and let it be what it is. It will soften on its own. And then there's this one, the anger that doesn't have a clean target, the anger at the fact that healing is this hard, that it takes this long, that it costs this much in therapy, in energy, in relationships, in time. Why do I have to work this hard for something that should have just been given to me? Why is it unburdening myself from someone else's damage my full-time job? That is a completely legitimate question, and it deserves to be asked. The healing process is not fair. It is also the only way through. And the anger at that fact, let it fuel you. Let it become the reason you refuse to quit. Here's what happens when you skip this phase, or suppress it, or spiritually bypass it. The anger doesn't disappear, it relocates. It becomes chronic people-pleasing because you're afraid of what happens if the anger comes out. It becomes depression because anger turned inward with nowhere to go collapses. It becomes physical symptoms, jaw tension, back pain, digestive issues. Your body holds what your mind won't acknowledge. It becomes self-sabotage, unconsciously recreating situations that mirror the original wound, hoping for a different ending, but getting the same result. The anger phase isn't optional. It's not something you can meditate your way around. It has to move through, and the only way out is through. So what do you actually do with it? First, name it out loud or in writing. I am angry at blank because blank. Completing that sentence is not weakness, it's precision. Second, move it through your body. Walk, run, dance, shake, hit a pillow. Anger is energy. It needs somewhere to go. Third, do not make permanent decisions from this phase. The anger phase will tell you to burn everything down. Some of that is wisdom. Some of it is the wound talking. Learn to tell the difference before you act. And finally, don't rush out of it. You spent years not feeling this. Let yourself feel it now. You are not dangerous for being angry. You are human, and you are healing. You were doing so well. You felt lighter, clearer, like yourself again. And then one day, without warning, you woke up and felt like you were back at square one. The heaviness returned, the thoughts came back, the progress felt like a lie. This is episode 2 of the healing era nobody talks about. And today we're talking about the regression phase, the phase that convinces you healing isn't working, when actually it's working exactly as it should. Let's start with the truth. Healing is not linear. You have probably heard that before, but hearing it and living it are two completely different experiences. Regression feels like failure. It feels like proof that you'll never get better. It feels like the work you've done meant nothing. It feels personal, like your mind is betraying you. But here's what regression actually is. It's your nervous system revisiting old territory with new eyes. Think of it like cleaning out a room. You make progress, clear the surfaces, organize the shelves, and then you open a drawer you hadn't touched yet, and suddenly the real room feels chaotic again. But you didn't go backward, you went deeper. Regression is not the absence of healing, it is healing reaching a layer it couldn't access before. Regression rarely comes out of nowhere, even when it feels like it does. There are 4 triggers that almost universally send people back into old patterns, old pain, old versions of themselves, and knowing them changes everything. Trigger 1 is anniversaries. Your body keeps the score. That's not just a book title, it's a biological reality. The anniversary of a loss, the time of year something happened, the season when everything fell apart. Your nervous system remembers even when your conscious mind has moved on. You might not even realize what's happening at first. You just notice you feel off, sad for no obvious reason, irritable, foggy, heavy, and then you do the math and realize it's the time of year again. This is called an anniversary reaction. It is incredibly common. It does not mean you haven't healed. It means you are human and your body loved and lost something real. The best thing you can do is acknowledge it, name the date, name what it means. Give yourself permission to feel it without labeling it as regression. Because honoring grief on schedule is not going backward, it's going through. This one surprises people the most. A promotion, a birthday, a wedding, yours or someone else's, a new home, a new relationship, a new chapter. These moments are supposed to feel good, and they might, but they can also crack something open, because milestones make us look back. They draw a line between who we were and who we are now. And sometimes, standing at that line, we feel the weight of everything it took to get there. The relationships that didn't make it, the version of yourself you had to leave behind, the people you wish you could see this moment, the person you thought you'd be by now. Joy and grief are not opposites. They live in the same house, and milestones open every door. If you felt inexplicably sad on a day that was supposed to be happy, you weren't doing it wrong. You were feeling the full weight of your journey. That is not regression, that is depth. You can do years of work, genuinely transform, feel like a completely different person, and then run into someone from your past, or drive past the house you grew up in, or smell something that takes you back, and in an instant, you're there again. The feelings, the smallness, the old dynamic, all of it. This is not weakness. This is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, pattern matching for survival. Old environments and old people are cues. Your brain associates them with a version of you that needed to behave a certain way to stay safe. And when the cue appears, the old behavior tries to follow. The difference between someone early in healing and someone further along isn't that the trigger stops working, it's that the recovery time shortens. It's that you can notice it happening. It's that you can choose differently even when everything in you wants to default. That noticing, that pause before the reaction, that is growth, even when it doesn't feel like it. Change, even good change, is destabilizing. A new job, a new city, a new relationship beginning or ending, becoming a parent, losing someone, or starting over. Big transitions strip away the routines and structures that help a regulated nervous system stay regulated. And when those scaffolds fall away, old coping mechanisms rise to fill the gap. The ones you thought you were done with, the ones you worked so hard to unlearn, suddenly they're back and louder than before. This is your system reaching for what it knows, not because you failed, but because change, even beautiful change, is a form of a loss. And loss always asks the nervous system to work harder. Be gentle with yourself in transition periods, not because you're fragile, but because you're doing more than it looks like. This is the question that matters most in the regression phase. Am I spiraling, or am I just having a setback? Because they feel identical from the inside, but they are not the same thing. And the responses to each one is different. A setback looks like this: a hard week, a triggering moment, a few bad days. You feel like the old you, but you still have access to the tools. You still know what's happening. You still have a thread back to yourself. A spiral looks like this: weeks of declining function, isolation that deepens instead of lifting, coping mechanisms that are causing harm, losing touch with why any of the work mattered. The thread back to yourself feels cut, not just frayed. If it's a setback, give it grace and time. Return to your basics, rest, reach out to someone safe, journal. Trust that you've been here before and you know the way back. If it's a spiral, that's not weakness, that's a signal. Reach out to your therapist, call someone, ask for help. Spirals are not moral failures. They are moments where the wound is bigger than one person can carry alone. And asking for support in those moments is the most courageous thing you can do. Before this episode ends, I want to give you something to hold on to. Because the regression phase lies to you, it tells you nothing has changed. It tells you you're the same person you were. It tells you the work was wasted. So here is the evidence it doesn't want you to see. You recognize this as a phase. The old you didn't even know phases existed. You're watching content about healing. The old you was still pretending nothing needed to heal. You came back to yourself after the last hard season. The old you didn't know the way back yet. The old you stayed in situations that hurt you because leaving felt impossible. Look at where you are now. Growth is not always visible in the moment. Sometimes you only see it when you look back, but it is there. It has always been there. Every hard day you survived is proof of that. You are not back at square one. You are on a spiral staircase, and you are still always moving up. Tomorrow, we talk about the loneliness phase. For when healing changes you so much that you look around and realize not everyone can come with you. Episode 3 drops tomorrow, Wednesday. You did the work, you went into therapy, you set the boundaries, you chose yourself. And somewhere in the middle of that, you looked around and realized how quiet it had become. The people who used to fill your time no longer feel like home. The conversations feel shallow, the room feels smaller, and you feel utterly, unexpectedly alone. This is episode 3 of the healing era nobody talks about. Today we talk about the loneliness phase, the part nobody warns you about when they tell you healing will set you free. Here is the thing about healing that the wellness world doesn't put on its aesthetically pleasing graphics. When you change, truly change, you become someone new. And becoming someone new means the old life no longer fits the same way. The friendships built on shared dysfunction start to feel hollow. The relationships that required you to be small become suffocating. The environments that once felt normal now feel like places you can't breathe. This is not you being difficult. This is not you becoming too much. This is called growth. And growth, by its very nature, separates you from what you've outgrown. The loneliness of healing is real. It is also temporary. But in the middle of it, it can feel like proof that choosing yourself was a mistake. It wasn't. It never is. Healing loneliness is not one thing. It comes in 3 distinct forms, and each one requires something different from you. Kind 1, outgrowing people. This is the loneliness that arrives quietly, not with a fight, not with a dramatic ending, just a slow, aching realization that you and someone you love are no longer going the same direction. You used to bond over shared pain, now you don't want to live there anymore. You used to laugh at the same things, now the humor feels unkind. You used to need each other in a specific way, now that need has changed and the relationship doesn't know how to exist without it. Outgrowing someone doesn't make them bad, it doesn't make you better, it just makes you different, and different when it reaches a certain distance becomes lonely. The grief of outgrowing someone you love is one of the most under-acknowledged losses in the human experience. There's no funeral for a friendship that quietly fades, no ritual for the relationship you had to release in order to become who you needed to be. But the loss is real, and you are allowed to grieve it fully, even as you keep walking forward. Kind 2, not yet finding your people. There is a gap in healing, a no man's land, where the old connections have loosened and the new ones haven't formed yet. You've done enough work to know what you're looking for. You know the kind of relationships you want, the depth, the safety, the reciprocity. You've stopped settling for less, but the people who can meet you there haven't found you yet, or you haven't found them, and the in-between is brutally, achingly quiet. This phase makes people doubt their standards. It makes them wonder if they've become too selective, too much, too intense, too healed for anyone to actually want to be around. None of that is true. What's actually happening is this. You have raised the quality of what you'll accept, and quality, real quality, takes longer to find. It is rarer. It requires more alignment. It cannot be rushed or manufactured. The gap is not a sign you've made yourself unlovable. It is a sign you've made yourself selective. And selective people eventually find exactly what they were looking for. They just have to survive the in-between first. Kind 3 is feeling alone in a crowd. This is perhaps the most disorienting kind because it comes with a side of shame. You are surrounded by people who care about you, people who would show up if you called, and still you feel completely invisible, completely unseen, completely alone. And you don't understand why, because by every external measure, you shouldn't feel this way. Here's what's happening. You've developed a new interior landscape, a new level of self-awareness, a new depth of feeling and processing, and the conversations around you haven't caught up. You're talking about growth and patterns and nervous systems, and everyone else wants to talk about the weather. You want to go deep, the room wants to stay surface level, and that gap between who you are becoming and where you still are creates a loneliness that has nothing to do with being unloved, and everything to do with not yet being fully met. Being loved and being truly seen are not always the same thing, and healing makes you hunger for the second one. Here is the reframe that changes everything. The loneliness phase is not empty. It only feels empty because you're used to filling yourself with other people, with noise, with busyness, with connection, even connection that costs you. But underneath the loneliness, something extraordinary is happening. You are meeting yourself, perhaps for the first time, without the noise of a relationship that needed managing, without the performance of a friendship that required you to shrink, without the constant hum of other people's needs drowning out your own. In the quiet, you are learning what you actually think, what you actually feel, what you actually want, what actually makes you laugh, what actually matters to you. Your identity is not disappearing in this phase, it is solidifying. It is becoming something real and rooted and yours, something that doesn't shift depending on who's in the room, something that can hold its own shape even when no one is watching. That is not loneliness, that is becoming. So how do you survive the loneliness phase without running back to what you already know doesn't work? First, grieve what you've outgrown. Don't skip this step. The relationships that no longer fit deserved something from you, and you deserve to acknowledge the loss. Write it down. Say it out loud. Cry if you need to. Grief is not weakness. It's the price of having loved something real. Second, be deliberate about not going backward. The loneliness will make the old connections look more appealing than they are. It will romanticize what you left. It will whisper that maybe you were overreacting, that maybe it wasn't that bad. Know that this is the loneliness talking, not the truth. Third, start showing up in spaces aligned with who you are becoming, not to force connection, not to perform your healing, just to be around people who are also going somewhere. Your people exist. They are also in their loneliness phase. They are also waiting to be found. And finally, learn to be good company for yourself. Take yourself somewhere you've always wanted to go. Make the meal you've been putting off. Watch the thing. Read the book. Start the thing. Build a relationship with your own presence so strong that solitude stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like rest. The right people are coming. The connection that can hold the full weight of who you are. They are coming. But first you have to become someone who knows their own worth. Even when the room is quiet, you are doing right now. Even on the hard days, especially on the hard days. Tomorrow, the feeling worse before better phase, for when the healing is real, the work is working, and somehow you feel absolutely terrible. Episode 4 drops tomorrow, Thursday. Peace, love, and light, Dr. Debbie. You started therapy, you did the journaling, you read the books, you made the changes. You are doing everything right. So why do you feel worse than when you started? Why is the sadness heavier? Why are the memories louder? Why does your body feel like it's finally catching up to every hard thing you told it to hold on just a little longer? This is episode 4, the final episode of the healing era nobody talks about. Today we talk about the feeling worse before better phase, the phase that makes people quit right before the breakthrough, and why you cannot afford to stop here. There is a paradox at the center of healing that nobody prepares you for. The deeper you go, the worse it can feel, not because you're failing, but because you're finally succeeding. Think about what healing actually requires. It asks you to stop numbing, to stop running, to stop performing okayness, and finally sit with what's actually there. And what's actually there has been waiting for a long time. The grief you postponed, the anger you swallowed, the fear you outran, the memories you filed away under, deal with later. Later is now. Active healing doesn't create new pain. It surfaces old pain that was always there, waiting for a safe enough moment to be felt. And the cruel irony is this: the safer you become, the more the pain trusts you enough to show itself. Feeling worse is not a sign the work isn't working. It is often the clearest sign that it is. To understand why this phase happens, you need to understand what your system was doing before healing began. When you experience something painful, especially repeatedly, especially early in life, your nervous system makes a decision. It decides that full feeling is a threat, that staying present with the pain is more dangerous than leaving it. So it builds walls: disassociation, numbness, hypervigilance, avoidance, busyness, perfectionism, caretaking everyone else. These are not character flaws, they are survival strategies. And they worked. They kept you functioning when functioning was all you could afford. But healing asks you to dismantle those walls, one by one, brick by brick. And when the walls come down, everything they were holding back comes with them. In your body, this can look like fatigue that doesn't respond to sleep, physical tension releasing in waves, crying without a clear reason, old injuries flaring, your appetite changing, your sleep patterns shifting. In your mind, this can look like memories surfacing that you hadn't thought about in years, dreams becoming vivid and strange, emotional responses that feel disproportionate to the moment, a sudden inability to tolerate things you used to push through easily. None of this is malfunction, all of this is integration. Your system is doing the most sophisticated, most courageous thing it has ever done. It is processing what it previously could only survive, and processing is loud. Processing is messy. Processing feels, for a while, a lot like falling apart, but it is the opposite. It is coming together. This is the most important section of this episode because there is a version of feeling worse that is part of the process, and there's a version that is a signal that something needs to change. Knowing the difference could change everything. Here is a sign you're in the phase. Number 1, the pain has texture and movement. Healing pain moves. It comes in waves. It has moments of heaviness and moments of relief. It shifts and changes and evolves. You have hard days and then a day that feels lighter. You cry and then feel strangely clearer afterward. The emotion moves through you rather than sitting on top of you like the permanent weight. If the pain has texture, if it moves, you are in the phase. You are processing. Keep going. Another sign you're in the phase. Number 2, you still have access to yourself. Even on the hardest days, you can still reach yourself. You still know what you value. You still have moments of clarity. You still reach for support, even imperfectly. You still show up for small things, a meal, a walk, a textbook. The thread back to yourself is frayed, but it is not cut. That thread is everything. As long as you can feel it, you are still in the process. You have not lost yourself. You are just deep in work. Here is a sign that something may need to change. Number 1, the pain is static and suffocating. If the pain stopped moving, if it feels the same every single day with no variation, no relief, no moments of air, that is a different signal. Grief and processing pain move. Depression often doesn't. It sits, it flattens, it makes everything the same gray. This is not a moral failing. This is not a weakness. This is your system telling you it needs more support than it currently has. A different therapist, a medication conversation, a higher level of care, more structure, more community. Something needs to shift, and asking for that shift is the bravest thing that you can do. Another sign something may need to change. Number 2, you've lost the thread back to yourself. If you can no longer remember why any of this matters, if you've stopped reaching for the things that usually help, if the people who love you feel very far away and you don't have the energy to close the distance, please reach out to your therapist, to a doctor, to someone you trust, to a crisis line if you need one. Losing the thread is not the end of the story, but it is a moment that asks for more than solo navigation. You were never meant to do all of this alone, And reaching out in the darkest moments is not giving up on healing, it is healing. I want to end this series and this episode with the thing I most needed to hear when I was in the middle of the hardest phase. What you are living through right now is not evidence that you are too broken to heal. It is evidence that you are brave enough to try. Most people never get there. Most people choose the numbness, the busyness, the version of life that asks nothing and gives nothing back. You choose differently. You choose to feel it, to face it, to sit in the discomfort of becoming instead of the comfort of staying the same. That is not weakness. That is the most radical act of self-love a person can perform. The feeling worse before better phase ends. I promise you it ends. Not because the pain disappears overnight, but because one morning you wake up and the weight is slightly lighter, and then slightly lighter again. And then one day you realize you laughed without immediately feeling guilty. You made a decision from a place of peace instead of fear. You choose yourself and it felt natural. You not like a fight, just natural. That day is coming. It is already in motion. Everything you are feeling right now is the price of admission to the version of your life that is waiting on the other side. Keep going. You are so much closer than you think. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. And what grows from here will be the truest version of you that has ever existed. Thank you for being here for all 4 episodes. This series was made for you. Every single word of it. On Friday, all 4 episodes stream together. The full healing era, back to back. Share this with someone who needs it. They'll know exactly why you sent it. Peace, love, and light to all. Dr. Debbie.